Every single year, thousands of lives are lost to self-harm and suicide. Suicide has recently become a very predominant issue of our time and is only becoming even more of a problem. Increasing in number every single year, suicide victims are found in almost 1 out of every 5 people. Suicide is the intentional taking of one's life. While taking a human life is usually seen as morally wrong, there are many arguments and sides to the topic. Suicide is the 11th most common cause of death in the United States. Every 13 and a half minutes, a life is lost to suicide, and nearly 1 million suicide attempts are made each and every year. Death by voluntary actions is a choice instinct to human existence, because most suicide victims see this as a way out and their door to freedom. Suicide is in fact frowned upon by most of the population and not agreed with. The issue within the topic of suicide is the taking of one's life, which is seen to be as morally unjust. Suicide attempts are made by people looking for an escape from a certain situation that seems impossible to get away from. Most don't realize that their choice of suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Those who attempt to end their lives are trying to escape feelings of rejection, hurt, or loss. Victims of suicide see themselves as a burden to others. Most feel unloved, unwanted, and victimized. Someone who is suffering from severe depression and thinking about suicide will often have a hard time seeing the good in things and believing that they will never be happy again and nothing will ever go their way. Physician-assisted suicide is one form of suicide that has raised many issues in society in the past few years. There is more interest now than there ever has been in whether or not terminally ill patients have the right to end their own lives. Medical science has come a long way in eradicating diseases that kill, so many people are living longer, often causing those to live in great pain and discomfort. For this reason, many people believe they need the option to bring death upon themselves in a dignified way if they choose to do so. Oregon is currently the only state in America where physician-assisted suicide is legal. Currently, patients have the right to refuse medical treatment even if it leads to their death. So why aren't we allowed to take our own lives with the help of medical professionals in a dignified way? This very touchy subject is more about dignity and freedom than it is of tragedy and death. According to Robert Gebbia, Executive Director of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide literally means to give up one's life. He emphasizes that suicide is the most terrible action that a person can do to themselves. He backs this up by saying more than 30,000 people take their own lives every single year. Suicide is cruel and can be done through many different methods, each varying in ways different from the others. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, in 2013, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death for all ages. There were 41,149 suicides in the United States that year, equaling to about 113 suicides a day, or 1 every 13 minutes. Many people have their different opinions on suicide. Some believe they should be able to end their life if they want to. It's their life, so why can't they do with it as they please? Most believe everyone should preserve human life and that all people should live up to their potential. According to the Christian religious tradition, suicide violates the natural law that God has created to govern the world and human existence. This tradition states that human life should only be taken away due to natural causes. One popular argument states that the many reasons for suicide, such as depression, emotional pain, and suffering, are temporary and can be fixed through therapy and making changes in one's life. While suicide is an escape to most of its victims, some argue that this is a rebellion against God and is a selfish act. There are just as many arguments in favor of suicide as there are against it. Those in favor of suicide reject the thought that it is usually irrational and seen as a solution to real problems. They believe that no other person has the right to force their own ideas that life should be lived. Rather, only the individual should be involved in the decision, and others should be respecting and choosing whatever they do. In the novel, On Suicide, A Disclosure on Voluntary Death, the author argues that suicide is the ultimate freedom of humanity. Some argue that if they can take the life of their unborn child legally through abortion, that they should be able to take their own life with the same consequences. To some, suicide is a choice. While there are many legitimate arguments to both sides of suicide, everyone has their own opinion. Some believe suicide is a selfish act and should never be considered, while others see it as a door to freedom. There are many ways to help those suffering with depression, and many ways you can create a direct call to action. If you know someone contemplating suicide or self-harm, you can get them the suicide hotline number or help them set up an appointment to see someone who can directly help them with the way they feel. No one should have to go through life depressed and feeling like a burden to others. If you know someone who is suffering, please help. Everyone deserves the chance to live their life to the fullest.